Okay, preview screenshot should be May 17th. Good, that should be it. Yes. Okay. And then I got to get to slideshow from the smart. Good. All right, you're seeing my screen, right?
Yep, everything looks good.
Super. Okay, so oh, James is coming. That's great. Okay, so as you know, this is a workshop, and that means that it's going to be going through the grant step by step. I have done screenshots of each of the pages of the grant so that I can help you with what our advice is from the grant committee about what, and our experience about what to put there, what not to put there. And then because we're a nice small group, you'll be able to ask questions as we go along. I have a few iRest stops. And when I do that stop, then I have about 5 places we can stop and ask questions about those parts. So could be a discussion. If you ask a question, please make it so that it's sort of general to everybody. If it's completely specific only to your grant, then that could maybe afterwards, I can stay afterwards, okay? Fair game. Okay, so I'm starting off with the vision of Rotary because I want to really stress this yellow part, creating lasting change. So the point of a global grant is not relief work. It is development work. It is long-lasting development work. And so the big umbrella is that it's what the beneficiaries want the most, and it's going to last. So if it's a water project, you're going to have a study that shows that that well is going to last at least 10 years in terms of giving enough water even for the growing population, for example. Or if it's an education project, those teachers are going to be trained and the computers are going to have a life cycle that you're going to describe and how to maintain them. So it isn't just a one-off. So I think that that's the key thing to global grants, that all these questions are focused on how is it going to last, what impact it's going to have, and how is it going to last? And the impact will have to do with the fact that the beneficiaries prioritized that they wanted it the most. So those are the main concepts for the whole thing for global grants. There are other funds that are emergency relief grants, other kinds of things, but for global grants, they want it sustainable. Okay, so we're going to get ready to write your grant. And for those people who just came in, I'd like you to put in chat if you're writing a grant now or you're planning one in the next Rotary year. Put in chat the club, the country where your grant will take place, and the focus area. So then when we talk about questions, I'll have some warning about what it is that you're looking at, and then I'll know coming forward too. Okay, so I'm a doctor. I like to use case studies. So there's one Rotary Club and Rotarian who has committed himself to putting computers and technology and training teachers in Antigua, the island. And he has done multiple grants that have gotten quite a bit of acclaim. And so I want you to think about how we're going to be visiting Antigua. Spectacular. I've only been there once, but certainly a beautiful place, and how this person, and this is how most Rotary grants start, has sort of gone in the backwoods and the back roads and found some schools and found what they needed, and talked to the parents and talked to the teachers and talked to the government about their schools, and really has committed himself over many years to be going back and taking the next step. And I think his goal is to probably end up in having improvements in all the government schools in Antigua. So this is what I'm going to use as an example as an education grant, but of course it's going to apply to any other grants too. But just picture yourself in Antigua as we go along, or the grant that you're writing, of course. Okay, so before you even start writing a grant, there's a couple things that you have to do in advance. And some of this I also mentioned last week at my lecture. So just to reinforce that everybody wanting to get any kind of matching funds needs to have an MOU, a memorandum of understanding with the district. every year it gets signed again by the new president and the new president-elect. And so I'll show you where to get that form. And then you just sort of after the first week, maybe in July, put it in front of the president, virtually or otherwise, have them sign it. And then it says on it where to send it to San Michael in the university district, who keeps track of all these things. The other requirements, that's requirement number one. This is to qualify your club to be able to get matching money, whether it's district or whether it's global, just any matching money. So the second one is attending either the basic global grant lecture or the district lecture. 2 members have to attend either 2 of them, one of those lectures or one each. And then that information also goes to Michael. San Michael. So those of you who attended my lecture last week, I have your list of names and I'm going to send that in, but otherwise you're responsible for letting him know. Okay, and then this is a website you always want to have in mind. This is a website where Jeff has taken, the head of the 5030 Foundation, has taken the most important resources that you need and put it on one little website so you don't have to go scrounging around on the big Rotary website for them. So 5030grants.com right there, and it is a com. And then you want to know district grants, it's there, global grants, other kinds of grants, all there and updated relatively frequently. So what we're talking about tonight is clicking on that global grants part. And here's some of the things you'll find on it. First of all, the overall guidebook for how to write and the policies for global grants, obviously important, what you can do, what you can't do. Community assessment tool and results, we'll talk about that. Monitoring and evaluation, we'll talk about that. And very useful is he's put the global grant template in a Word document. The advantage of that is you can see all the questions at once, whereas in the application, you really can't. And the other thing is it's very easy to share. The application's not so easy to share. So the application that's on the Rotary site that you're going to end up sending in. So it is useful to maybe write all the answers to the questions in that Word document. And then when you get ready to put it in the application, it's just a clip and paste. But that way you can share it better and so on. And that MOU with the district that I told you about, it's on this 5030grants.com website. Just go right there, click it up, get your president to sign it so you can get qualified. Okay, now how are you going to get to that application? So you're going to go to myrotary.org or rotary.org. And you're going to sign in. If you don't have an account yet, you're going to go to register and do your username and password thing. And then you're going to sign in. And when you sign in, you'll have this page, won't have this cute picture, but it will have this menu. You will go to Rotary Foundation and do not click, but it will drop down a menu. You're going to hover. And then it'll drop down a menu. And one of the things is apply for grants. Hover here. And it'll drop down a menu and you want to go to global grants. Click on that. And when you do that, here's what you'll find. So this is the bottom of a long page that you scroll down. You can see every single one of these things is hyperlinked. And on the top are all the different kind of manuals and information you might want. Many, the most important of which are on 5030grants.com. Here you have the statements of how you do whichever focus group you decided, focus area you decided on. So in our case, we would click on the basic education and literacy guidelines for this Antigua grant, but whichever choice you have for your focus area, this will give you all the guidelines you want. So this is at the bottom of that first page you'll get after you go to global grants. And then at the very bottom are your tools. And this one says start your grant application. So we're going to click on that in a minute. But I also want to point out to you that at the very, very bottom, you have your Rotary Grant Officer. So last week I talked about teaming with your country chair. So if it's in Antigua, the chair who's in charge of the Caribbean islands, so that that person knows what kind of grants you're going to write and can give you suggestions and you sort of team with them. And then in addition, they can give you advice about the Rotary, your host Rotary, if they're qualified also, or have some outstanding reports, or have some trouble with it, or that they do a good job. So you can get a little bit of advice about the host Rotary from your grant chair also. Any other kinds of questions like that. So every grant chair is for all the countries are listed there. They're inconveniently listed by district, but you just scroll down until you find your country and they have a phone number and a name. Okay, so now you're going to start your grant. You've clicked on Start Your Global Grant, and this is your first page. So basically, you need a name of your project. That's simple. It's going to be a humanitarian project. The vocational training and the scholarship, we can talk about it in the questions if you want, but those are very specific rules. So your global grant is almost always going to be this humanitarian project. Check that. And then you're going to have a committee of 3 people, of which you, the writer or the lead, is the international lead. So we are international, and the host is in the country, hopefully the Rotary Club that's closest to the project, or close enough to be involved in the project. The other really important pearl here is these 3 lines. So it used to be that they had hot links all the way down the side. Now you have to click on this to get all the hot links for the things that you need. And it's going to be on every single page. So all you do for your resources is click those little lines and it'll all drop down for you. Don't know what happened there. Okay, so that's that one, and that's that one, and that's that one. So then you're going to have your primary contacts, and that's probably you, and then the same person in the host club, the champion for this project in the host club, and 2 other committee members, as I said. So a very frequently asked question is, what is a conflict of interest? So it is common and good, if you want, that the executive director or a board member or 2 of the nonprofit that you're going to work with is in your Rotary. It's very common. So that's not a conflict of interest, but they cannot be on the committee. They can do all the work. They can advise the committee. They can write the grant with the host, but they cannot be on the committee. The reason is the committee oversees the grant and oversees the nonprofit, or so that's doing the work in country. So if you're working for that nonprofit, whether you're on the board or whether you're the executive director or on the staff, then you're overseeing yourself. And of course, that is a conflict of interest. So I think it's pretty clear about that. If you donate to that NGO and don't get anything back, that's not a conflict of interest. Okay, the other thing you have to do before you can send in your grant is that you have to have done a community assessment. And that makes sense because that's the way you're going to find out and objectively delineate what the beneficiaries want. So there is a hot link to this community assessment tool. It's on the 5030 grant website, and it's also on that drop-down menu of resources on every page of the grant, the community assessment tool. You need to look at that and it'll tell you how you do the different types of assessment that they want. And then there's a community assessment results hot link, and that is where you put the results of the community assessment. Now, a lot of times the nonprofit has already done a community assessment, or if it's in the case of government schools like our Antigua project, there's probably an assessment already done of what the needs are, as long as it's been talking to the beneficiaries and isn't just sort of an oversight kind of thing, because you want it really to go literally from the ground up. So the community assessment has to be done and attached to your grant. Now, sometimes as I say, the NGO has probably done it because they're looking for other grants and they have to do it. But if it's not done, you could use a district grant to finance it and then use that for a global grant. If you're needing to have money to do the community assessment tools, otherwise a direct grant, but the global grant is not going to do the community assessment. Okay. So the first thing to fill out is basically it says, tell us about your project. What are the main objectives? Who will benefit? And you want to answer those questions specifically. So it's what I would call the elevator speech. So by the time these two have come down from the 11th floor to the ground floor, this person knows everything he needs to know specifically about your project. So that's why it's an elevator speech. So basically, they don't want to know what the UNESCO or the World Health statistics are. They don't want to know what the country statistics are. They want to know what are the problems that you're going to solve with this in your catchment area of beneficiaries. So you might have a sentence that says, you know, that Antigua has a huge disproportion of boys over girls graduating from a primary school, and you want to fix that, but they're going to want to know what are those numbers of the disparity in the schools that you're working with. So one general, statement or something about it to introduce, that's fine, but don't go into all that because they want to know what's this grant going to do in those particular places. So the next thing is, which is the area of focus that you're going to focus on? And in our case here with the Antigua one, we're going to look at basic education and literacy just as an example. You can also have two focuses. Each one is going to have a set of measurements. Each one is going to have a set of results and impact. So it's more complicated to do two than one, but like I've done one in Guatemala, where we put computers in the schools and trained teachers, and we put sanitation stations on the schools because they didn't have any. And that also attracts more girls. So you get more bang for your buck literally that way. And you can do that. But again, but no more than two focuses because you have too many things to then measure and focus on. So I would really recommend no more than two focuses, and one is definitely easier. Okay. So the area of focus, once you click on your education, in this case, area of focus, it's going to give you what they want you to do, and you choose which one. So are we supporting growth programs that strengthen a community's ability to provide basic education and literacy to all? Or is this only about adult literacy? Or is it, and also, are we working to change the ratio of girls to boys? So everybody's got some gender equality here or not. So you have to choose one of them. You can choose all three or two, but you have to at least choose one of them. And then that you have to check off. And in this case, this would be here and probably here. And then for each one, you're going to have measurements. So here is a drop-down menu. You're going to click on Add Measurements. And then down here, you're going to say who is gathering the measurements, who is taking in the results. And it's probably the NGO, but it could be that the host Rotary Club is doing that too, or it may be, the teachers or the principal. So whoever it is, you're going to describe who it is that's taking the results. So here we're going to click on Add Measure, and you can select, you'll click on Measure and you'll select which measurements you want. So if you check that you're benefiting school-age children or older children or females, and then you can keep on clicking your measures, but only don't do too many because you're going to have to show the results from them. So do the most important ones, but you don't have to do every one. And if you have another important measurement, you can put your own in here too, but you have to select at least one of these and probably a couple. So that's your measurement, and then a drop-down menu for how frequently are you going to measure the measurement, and then how are you going to collect the data. So here's a drop-down menu for the data. So for this particular one, the number of kids, it's probably going to be teacher reports or something like that. It won't be satellite imagery or a focus group, right? So you just have a measurement for each of these measurements, how you're going to collect it, who's going to benefit, and frequency. These are all drop-down menus there. And then there are things that they will not fund. And in this case, this is what they will not fund in the education section. They're not going to build schools. They're not going to give you, let you build a playground. They're not going to, unless it's absolutely integrated, maybe it's an environmental focus and it's integrated into the education about the environment, or you have to really wrap it tight around that playground to get a playground, not a playground just to play. And so each one of the focus areas will have this to let you know about it. That's in the area of focus policy statements, which I've already shown you. Also, it's sort of interesting because you're going to be training the teachers who are going to get paid, but what you have to be specific about what the grant is paying. Are they paying the teachers extra in addition to their salaries? So that there's a certain number you're paying by the hour for doing particular training or something like that, because you can't just pay salaries, because again, that's not sustainable. What happens when the grant's gone? Then they're not getting their salaries. So you have to just keep in mind that sustainability piece and how each thing that you're going to provide has to have a lifetime. Okay, so do you feel like we're beating our heads against the wall, or do you have some questions, or are we good? Yes, Sala. Sala, did you raise your hand and take yourself off mute?
Unmute.
Yeah.
I think I know the answer, but the committees do not include non-Rotarians. Is that correct?
Right, they're Rotarians.
Okay. And had something else. We might already have a club MOU. I mean, is it specific to the grant, or is the club
So
MOU with
there
the
are
district?
there are two memorandums of understanding that are completely different. The first one that I talked about already, and the other one I'll talk about later, is the one that's between the club and the district. And it applies to any matching funds you might want from the district. And so it applies to district grants as well as any other kind of grant and global grants.
And it's not specific to the project.
Not specific to the project. It lasts the whole year for any matching funds you get for whatever reason, or any district funds you get for whatever reason. And basically it says that you're taking responsibility for the project. If something goes wrong with the project, the club has to take care of it. The district's not responsible.
Okay.
It says it in a few pages, but that's sort of what the main thing is.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Any other questions? Ryan, are there other questions?
I'm Christine. I just have one question.
Yeah.
Okay, so Sala asked the question, are the committee members non-Rotarians or Rotarians?
They are
Rotarians.
Rotarians. When you put down, they are Rotarians of the host club. When you put in the name, they're going to give you a drop-down list of the Rotarians of that club, and you select them. They should be people that are familiar with the project. So if the lead somehow leaves Rotary or something happens to them, then the other people can fill in. So they are Rotarians of either the international club for the international committee or the host club for the host committee. Really good question.
Great.
Jorge has the.
You know, Jorge?
Yes. Do you have any samples of the MOUs?
Yes, it's at 5030 grants.com.
Okay, thank you.
And I looked on the website to find the person I should be talking to at RI, and there's a phone number, but it's international. Is there any way that we can get their email so we don't have to spend money making international calls?
Well, if you, yeah, usually they have some kind of number, but if you Zoom or you Skype or you WhatsApp, you don't have to spend any money.
Okay, they didn't have emails, and there were two names.
I know. I don't know why they don't have emails. It's kind of weird. But
There were two names. One was for the district, and then there was another one beside it. Do you know what that is?
the country chair is what you want. So in your case, it's going to be Ghana, the chair for Ghana.
And that's not the same as the district. That's the bigger one. Okay.
That's for the global grant. Yes, Jorge.
Yes, I wanted to suggest that for international conferences or calls, there is a fantastic service called freeconferencecall.com, and it's totally free,
Mhm.
totally free. And it has local numbers in the vast majority of countries that I know of. I've used it for many years and it is exceptionally good.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Quite a number of platforms, especially since we've had these 2 virtual years. Okay. Is that it, Ryan?
Yes, I didn't see any other questions.
Okay, good enough. All right, so next, this is simple. Where is it going to take place? And of course, you're going to know that. That's easy to fill out. And then when will it take place? So the start date, you should put the start date at least 3 months out from when you're going to submit your grant, because it's going to take a while for that process to happen. It's not going to start any faster probably. And then the end date is really important. So here's my pearl for that. Make it longer. So if you think this is going to take a year, make it a year and a half. If you think it's going to take 2 years, make it 2.5 years or 3 years. The reason is that nobody's going to complain if you get it done faster. There's going to be more paperwork if you don't get it done on time, you're setting the time. So give yourself extra months. For instance, let's say you're going to implement something in the schools, like with the computers and stuff. Well, then you're probably going to want to look at results 6 months later. So you have to add 6 months after implementation, even after all the teachers are trained, right? And then you're going to have probably a flood or a hurricane, or you're going to have COVID, or you're going to have any other kind of thing that slows it down. Almost everything takes longer than you think. And I think you know that in this country too. So just give yourself lots of extra time. There's no downside. And as I say, if you finish early, you get kudos. So give yourself extra time here. Don't squeeze it. Okay, now we're going to talk about something that I referred to briefly in the talk last week, which is this is a marriage between these 4 groups. So you have to have champions in each of the groups, and we'll talk about MOUs to answer your question, Jorge, for the groups in a minute. So first of all, the community that is the beneficiary, and then the nonprofit, or it could be a government organization. Like if it's the government schools, then the government is the oversight organization, the host Rotarians International. So here we are, the international, the representative of the beneficiary group, the local host Rotarians, the nonprofits, and this is the mayor of the town. So the government is there taking credit. This is a marriage for the whole part of the grant, writing it, doing it, implementing it, and doing the reports at the end and all its success. You have to have champions in each of them, and you have to know, to Sala's point, how you're going to communicate with them. You know, is it going to be on conferencing? Is it going to be on Zoom? Is it going to be on WhatsApp? Is it going to be phone, text? Everybody has different ways they communicate, and you need to know how your champions communicate with you. Okay, now up to that MOU. The Memorandum of Understanding specific for your global grant will include your club, the international club, the host club, and the nonprofit. So anybody who's providing services, not necessarily the people that you're going to buy the computers from, but providing services, training the teachers, for instance, those people are going to be, the trainers are going to be in the MOU. And that one is in the hot links that are down the side. So here, right, this is Cooperating Organization Memorandum of Understanding. When you hit those 3 little lines where it says resources, this is what you'll find for your MOU for your global grant. So this is very specific for your global grant, and I'll go through what you're going to put on that MOU. So it's, I already said that it's between any of these organizations. Okay, so here's something that the cooperating organization might have, and as a list, both in the grant and in the MOU. The needs, they might have already done the needs assessment, as we talked about before. They will probably be doing some kind of teaching and education. So education for the community or the school kids, teaching the teachers about the new equipment or the new curriculum or whatever it is that you're innovating there. The trainers to teach the maintenance of the equipment. That might be whether it's the computers or maybe it's a water project or something like that. And then usually the cooperating organization will have some staff from the beneficiary population, same ethnic group, same language group. It makes sense that the more that they identify with the beneficiary population, the more effective they can be in teaching. That's an obvious concept. And the most important thing is the cooperating organization is a contractor to the two Rotary clubs. So they report to the host club and the host club reports to the international club, or maybe sometimes they report directly to both, but it is a contractor situation. And all that goes in the MOU. And of course, there's spaces for all that in the application itself. Now, the host club has to have a role. So the host club, they're going to want to know how close is that host club to your project. Sometimes it's impossible to have it really close because there's no host club there, but the closest one. And if it's a long distance away, you should describe how it is that they're going to get there. Are you going to have to pay for their transportation for them to go there? Are you going to is it a place where the Rotarians have a summer place, or the Rotarians go there for business? And so then therefore they will be seeing the beneficiary community. The main thing is it should not look like a pass-through. It shouldn't look like the nonprofit wrote this grant, and then you're just having the host club give money to the nonprofit and they're doing what they would have done anyway. That will be a red flag to Rotary International. The whole point is for the Rotarians to be involved. So you have to watch for that. They'll call it out. So they might be collecting the funds, they might be implementing the project or helping the NGO in these various ways. They might do some of the bidding if there's competitive bidding involved for equipment. And then they will frequently have the bank account in which all the money goes, the grant money goes, and keep very close track of each piece that was spent, because in the end, that all has to be accounted for in your progress and final reports. So sometimes it's the international club that does that, and sometimes it's the host club, but you have to work closely together to make sure it's definitely happening. And a lot of times the host club, because they're closest to the situation, will write the annual progress report and the final report, and then you'll sort of help with that. So those are kinds of things you can list that they're going to do. Okay, and then the international club also can't just be a pass-through. So of course, the international club is leading in the fundraising, but also maybe you're managing the funds, maybe you're going to visit the sites, you're going to be in communication virtually, if not locally, with the nonprofit and with the host club especially. And then of course, you're responsible for having those reports in on time. So it's a yearly report, progress report until you've finished, and then a final report. Okay, it's going to have a space for volunteer travelers, but that is probably not you. And it's very specific. You can have up to 2 travelers that the grant pays for. Anybody can travel, but this is what is the grant paying for. 2 travelers, and there has to be documentation from the host club that those skills are not available in the country, or that they could have access to them. And then the skills that those 2 travelers have, they'll have their CVs there, their resumes, and showing that they are the ones and that you can't get that in the country. So mostly you're going to have that blank. Okay, so crick in the neck, can't stand it anymore, or you have some questions, or are we good?
I, of course, always have questions.
Yeah,
We're going to be doing training of community health volunteers in 8 different sites, and the people that are doing the training are from the Ghana Health Service. Does that mean that they might be able to get some of their travel expenses paid, or is that so complicated that we should just put it in the budget and not mess with it?
Yes, you can pay for them to travel. So if they're coming together for a conference to get their training for what they're going to do in this grant, yes, you can pay for that travel. When I said the travelers, I meant, international travelers coming from other places to train.
They're-
But
they're
if
not
they're
com-
going to be the ones who are doing the training, that's
They
fine.
are.
And they're
They're the
in
ones that-
country. So yes, you can put that in there, but it doesn't go under travelers. It just goes in the budget.
In the budget, okay.
Yeah, and you're describing it. And it's not in that traveler section.
Okay.
Would you agree with that, Larry? Is Larry still
I'm
on?
guessing
Yeah,
it's
I'm
easier
still
that way
there, and
anyway.
yes, you're right.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay, so in the budget, but not in that traveler place, which is very specific for what I just told you about.
Okay.
Okay, are we good to go on? Good. Oh, yes, Jorge.
Yes. You've mentioned NGOs. In the case of the mammography project that we have,
Mhm.
we are working with the local health department, the provincial health department. Is that
Mhm.
okay?
Yes, that's fine. So it's a government organization.
Yes.
And they'll be on the MOU. And
Okay.
sometimes the government, depending on the country, the government might say, well, I don't want to sign a private contract like that. In that case, I've seen that the government agency can write a letter directed to the Rotary Foundation saying, yes, we promise to provide these services. And then you just attach that.
Okay.
And in the
Fantastic.
MOU, you could put the name of it, of that agency, and you can say, see attached letter or something like that.
Okay.
Good question. Okay, anybody else? Okay, we're moving on. Okay, so here's where you're going to put in your budget. So basically the page looks like this. You're going to, I just took a random, I don't know if this is Angola or what, but I just took a random one to put it in there so I could screenshot it. And then and then you can put in the exchange rate. The best thing is to click on this exchange rate and let Rotary put in the exchange rate for you. And then then they can't argue with you. So I just sort of made that up.
It changes every week too.
Well, and then it'll have a date as to, see, it says saved on, that'll automatically go there. And so then if there's a big lag, you might want to click on that again and get the newer exchange rate. And that, that fluctuating change rate is true in all the countries. And you can put a piece in the budget for that fluctuation. You can put up to 5% in the budget for currency up and downs. So if you want to. Okay. And then there's going to be a drop down here for the category. So it could be equipment, it could be training, it could be personnel, and you'll just click on it. Then you'll say what you'll type in what it is. You'll type in the name of the supplier if you have it, and then the cost, and then they'll convert it by this factor to what that cost really is. So in this case, I just sort of made some stuff up and put it there. And then it adds up for you what your budget is in dollars and in local currency. And then this is a place, there are two places. So this is a place where if you want to explain your budget, which you probably do, you might have more to say than that. Or let's say you've already gotten the estimate for these 40 desks. So you can show that pro forma. You can upload all those things, your community assessment, your MOU, your budget details, any pictures of the project, anything else that you want to put in there. If you can show how crappy the desks are and why they need new desks, you put pictures of crappy desks. Whatever it is that you think will best explain it, you can put it in here. And there's another section that just says documents, and you can put it in there, either one. Okey-doke, here's my thing, there it is. Okay. And then the whole reason you're going through all this is to get matching funds. So how does it work? So the 50-30 clubs, the district will match 1-to-1 to these limits. So if you have a collection of 50-30 clubs, and let's say they put in 20,000 total, then the district will match that at 20,000. And then the Rotary Foundation will match that at 80% of the district designated funds, which is the district match. And if the district in your host club puts in money, DDF money, district designated fund money, they'll match that too. Or any other country or any other, like if you have Spokane, for instance, partner in Spokane, and if their district matches, then whatever the district match is, some districts match, some districts don't. We are very liberal with our match. Because we have a limited budget of matching funds, we like to limit each project so there's more chance for more people to have more projects. So these are the limits. For each club, you can put in as much as you want, but we will match up to 15,000. And for each total project, we'll match up to 22,000. Okay. And then that match will go to the 80% match for the DDF. Okay. So that is the budget side. Now the funding side. So the next piece is funding, and you'll put in, so I made this up too. We don't, and so you'll put in how much you've gotten from clubs. So I just sort of made it up with this 30,000. We don't have 30,000, just so you know. But put in that, and then that will 15,000 of it will be matched, right? The other 15 will go into the grant, but 15 will be matched. And then let's say Lake Union, Larry's club puts in 7,000. That's less than 15. So that'll be totally matched. So that's 22,000 that'll be matched. And so the district designated fund is at the maximum that we match, 22,000. So coming down here, the DDF contributions are 22,000, and that will be matched at 80%, which is 17,600. And that's there. And then the cash contributions that are there are 37,000. So this grant has added up to 76,600. So I went through that really fast. So do you have questions? That I'm going to stop here because this is one of the more complicated parts. We're good? Excellent. Okay, so actually that's my rest. So, and no questions?
I have one, I'm trying to find it.
I got a question.
Yeah.
This is being recorded, right?
Yes.
Good. That's what I'm-
There's no test. I don't expect you to memorize all this, but I think it's useful because then you can pull it up when you're actually writing it and sort of buzz through to the part where you're stuck and, and review that. Yes.
Very good.
This might not be a question for you, but as this money is collected, it's collected by the lead Rotary Club?
So, okay, so actually, that's a good question. I should show you that. I was going to mention, just a minute, is it on this one? Or yeah, it should be here. Okay, yes. So I should have mentioned that. So basically, the lead Rotary Club can collect all that money. And then whether the lead Rotary Club is going to manage the funds or the local Rotary Club is going to manage the funds, there has to be a bank account specific for this grant. And then those funds go into that bank account. It could be the host club's bank account. It could be your bank account. But yes, initially, while you're collecting the money, I would collect it in your club. Now, if you would like Rotary International to collect it, they will do it and they'll charge 5%. So that's what this column is. If you're collecting the money, you can ignore this column. If you're, and you can ignore this. This is the real numbers. If you want, there's some clubs like Larry's Club that likes to have Rotary International collect it or have some of the donations go through Rotary International, then they can get Paul Harris points and stuff. So then there has to be that 5% added, but that's unusual. And that club would tell you if that's what they want. So most people are going to collect it in their own foundation. And if your club is small, doesn't have a foundation, there's a district foundation that you can work with.
Kathleen,
Yes.
so you're showing the cash from the club, from the two clubs there, and then the DDF funds, plus the World Fund. Is
Right.
the World Fund the global, the money that comes from the global grant, or is that
So,
separate?
oh, that's a good question. So the World Fund is the Rotary Foundation's contribution.
Okay,
And just briefly, that comes from our donations to the World Fund each year. They keep it for 3 years and then they give it back to us except for 5%. And so they basically, half of it goes to district grants, half of it goes to global grants. And then, or I should say a quarter, and then half of it they keep back for matching. That's a whole other complicated thing, but basically the money you donate to the Rotary Foundation's annual fund will come back to the grant writers in matching funds.
Thank you.
Mhm.
do we keep track either in our budget or in our sources of funding of in-kind donations, or is that not?
Yes, so you can have, so the budget should just have the money.
Okay,
In-kind donations, I put in the narrative.
okay,
So basically, if, let's see, in our Antigua schools, the people are going to be putting some skin in the game by building security around the school so the computers can't be stolen, then I put that in my narrative as part of their buy-in, right? But it doesn't have, but the grant is not paying for it. So the budget should have the money. And it could be from a corporation, it could be from a private donor, those kinds of things too. But whatever the category is, and they give you choices of categories. But in kind really should be in the narrative.
okay. And then in my grant, I'm probably going to have a contribution from the Gates Foundation and from Malaria Partners International. So do I need to get MOUs from both of them?
No. No, I don't think so.
Okay,
No, you just put in that they're going to give that. And then
Okay.
you're responsible for them giving it. So, yeah.
so I have to have a big club in my hand.
Yeah, and they probably have some arrangement with RI, how they give it through our, the Rotary Foundation. I don't know exactly how they give it. But basically, until that money's in the bank account, or maybe it's going to be, there's a deal where they do it, in the really big grants partially, until it's in the bank account, they're not going to give you the matching funds.
Okay,
So you don't need an MOU because it's not going to be there if,
and I hate to go back to the beginning, but two of the people on my team and my club are not going to be inducted for another couple weeks. Is that okay?
yeah, you won't be able to list them until then, but that's no big deal.
That's okay.
Okay, we're past that one. Okay, now we're up to sustainability. So it's kind of interesting that it's towards the end of the grant that you really have to put in most of your content. So there's a question, these are all separate questions. So you have to take what narrative you have in your mind. This is why you don't put a huge narrative in that really beginning place and split it up between these things, because of course they overlap. So describing the community needs, that's going to be clip and paste from your community assessment, right? You're going to maybe have to rephrase it, but that's what's going to be. And how did the team identify the needs? I mean, that was also in your community assessment. So clip and paste it. And then how are beneficiaries involved in the solutions? How are community members involved in the planning? So all these things, the answers to, but you want to, sort of re-describe it again and again and again. But they all need answers. And there is a 6 steps to sustainability hot link that will help you with how you have that language that it's going to last. Remember, the sustainability requirement is key. All right. So now the other part is summarize each step of your implementation and what is your timeline. So you can put that timeline in there, and again, be liberal with it because nobody's going to complain if you do it faster. And then almost every single grant will have a education or training component or both. And so that, of course, has its own special form, which of course is hot linked under that resources thing, right? It's also on 5030grants.com. So the training of the teachers is very specific. How many classes, how much do they get paid per hour, or anybody who's doing training. and what are the topics that they're going to cover, how are they going to teach it, so that you can tell them it's interactive and it's not just a bunch of boring PowerPoints like I'm doing right now. And so on and so forth. You'll have to look at that, but that'll be attached. That's one of your documents you're going to attach. So it's very specific. And then these are the last questions: your local maintenance and repair. How is it going to be sustained with that? Is there a contract like for that mammogram machine that you're doing, Jorge? And who's going to repair it? And are the parts locally fine? The answer to this question, yes, it has to be able to be locally repaired. And if you have a no, you better explain it. Is the equipment owned by the beneficiaries? In the end, it needs to be owned by the beneficiaries. The Rotary clubs cannot own it. And then the life cycle, how long is it going to be sustained long term? And will it generate any income? A lot of them won't and some will. So if there's an opportunity to generate income from it and that's part of your sustainability, definitely take credit for it and put it in. But if it's not, you just say it's not. Yes, James. You have to unmute yourself.
So we need champions for 4 different groups.
Yeah,
Wrote down community, NGO, international, and host Rotarians.
correct.
So the beneficiaries,
Yeah, they're on the top.
they're the community.
They're the community. They're the school children.
So the school children have to own a mammography machine? Well, no.
No. In this case, it would be the schools.
Okay, for the schools. Now we're working with an NGO. Who's going to own the equipment? Have we figured that out yet, Jorge?
With the mammography that you're putting in a government facility, I would think in the end that hospital or the government's going to own it.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether it's going to be owned by the provincial health department or the hospital in charge of doing the diagnosis of
Okay.
the.
Right.
Yeah, well, I see. The
So we
hospital,
work that out. It's just not going to be owned by the Rotary Club.
Absolutely, yeah.
okay,
Are we good?
good, thank you.
Okay. So now we've come to the end of the application. And I want to absolutely stress this, that the Global Grants Committee has to review it before you lock it. When you hit authorize on your name, that'll lock it. Nobody can change it after that because it's a legal document and you don't want somebody to be able to go above your name and change it after you've signed it. It's just like signing any other legal document. But the Grants Committee has to review it, because not only could that be an advantage to you because we might be able to help you, but also we run the budget for the matching funds. So we have to know about it and we have to say, yes, this will be fine for the matching funds, or no, that's too much matching funds, or yes, you can have these matching funds, but you may not get it until next year because we're running out of matching funds. So we need to be able to review it. And my recommendation strongly is to not submit before we have reviewed it. And anytime during your writing it, of course, you can always send us a draft, but and then we can give you advice along the way. But when you've got most of your funding committed and a plan for the rest of your funding, and you've got most of your grant or all of your grant pretty much written up, then we definitely need to see it. And we usually try to take no more than a week to review it and get back to you and give you recommendations, which you can or needn't follow. Although sometimes I can say you must do that. But you need to do that before you submit it. Otherwise, what happens is it goes in, it has to be authorized by the governor and by the head of the foundation here and in the host club and by the club president. And so they all sign it, and then there's something wrong, and then you have to get it unlocked and everybody unsigns it, and then it has to go back through that again. You really don't want to deal with that. Okay, so that's what I've just said. You and the host club, make sure the host club is agreeing also to what you've written, because we have had situations when it seemed like it's perfect, everybody likes it, the committee likes it, and then all of a sudden the host club said, oh, I didn't see that part, I want to change it, and then it has to be undone again. and you don't want to get into that. So make sure your host club is with you and you're with them. And then you lock it by authorizing it. And then make sure, then that automatically will come to the head of the foundation here, which is Jeff Brennan. And then after July 1st, it'll be Howard Cohen. And then the same people in the host club have to do it. And a lot of times they have to be pinged a few times to make sure they do it, because it doesn't go to the Rotary Foundation until everybody has authorized it.
So they have to get it authorized in their district?
Yes, so it's the parallel people, your host club and you are parallel. So it would be the club president, you and the lead in the host club, the club presidents, the district foundation people, and the governors of each of the district. So everybody gets to sign it. Okay. And then it gets submitted. Once everybody's authorized it, an automatic submission to the Rotary Foundation. And then you feel like this, except it'll take 2 or 3 weeks. Sometimes it's taking longer now. And everybody blames COVID, but who knows why. And then they will give you feedback. And they will give you feedback, criticism, and then they'll be asking for more information. And the faster you get that back to them, then the faster you will get through the approval process. So just keep in mind, it feels almost like a punch in the stomach when you get your criticism back, because we're all professionals. We all have worked really hard on this. We think we've got it right. And then they come back with all these things. So it's important to not take it personally. It's important to just try and get the information from the host club, the nonprofit, from what you know, and get it back as quickly as possible, because then they can review that and hopefully get to yes. Hopefully, maybe they'll go through another iteration, but the faster you get it back, the faster they can respond. And then what happens, they'll say you're approved. And that's when the money, you should transfer it to the approved bank account, whether it's at the host club or whether it's at your club. And then you send a statement to the Rotary Foundation showing that all that money that you put in your funding plan is there. And then they send the matching funds to that bank account. So this is who's in the Global Grants Committee. You can approach any one of us. As I said, Howard's taking over July 1st. So I'm ready for any other questions. Yes.
More.
Oh, no, wait a minute. We got James.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Chance.
I go by Jim.
Yeah, that's right. I know you, but I forgot that. Okay, Jim.
On the previous slide, there it is. See the word feedback?
Yeah.
It comes after the word submit.
Right. You submitted to Rotary International. They will give you feedback or criticism. I'm being polite with this word feedback.
Isn't there a problem because we've already authorized and submitted? Now we got to undo all basic feedback, undo the signature.
Okay, good question. Once it's submitted, it stays. And then the rest is done by email.
So the feedback, we can tweak this thing, but it's pretty much locked in.
It's locked in. It is kind of weird, but it's locked in. And so you don't change the grant unless occasionally they'll say it's so off mark, we're putting it back to draft status.
Okay.
And if they do that, then you're going to be changing the actual grant. Most of the times, and hopefully, after it's passed our committee and you've done all this work,
Right.
That won't happen. That's kind of a flunk.
I see.
So basically they'll say they want more specific information, like the proportion of the girls to the boys in a particular school.
Okay.
Or in the case of our Antigua thing, for each of the schools, or the ratio of the female teachers to the male teachers, which you didn't really focus on. So there'll be some kind of factoids or some kind of thing they want. How far is it between the host club and these schools, blah, blah, blah. And then you'll just give them that information by email.
I guess I was thinking about that emotional expression you had about the feedback. If it's such minimal stuff, then why would somebody get so excited? I mean, at the feedback point, they're not going to give you something typically that's going to really upset the apple cart.
Oh, you watch. It can happen.
But they still have it locked in, don't they? It's locked in.
No, the lock-in is not a guarantee. The only thing that lock-in is that it can't be changed. But you can add information or shift it around by email.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Locked in doesn't mean the grant is locked in.
Okay.
Until you get this word approval,
Yeah.
the money is not locked in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was an excellent question. I didn't mean to give the impression that you can assure yourself of the money. You know, they have to give the final approval.
Yeah.
One question that, it's about 7:30. One question that was how people can get this slideshow, and it's on the district's YouTube channel is where you'll find it.
So go to YouTube, go to District 5030, and then the trainings will be there.
Do you have time for another question or two?
Yeah, it's if people, does anybody else have questions?
Please.
Because I can stay on with you, Sala, if you'd like.
Okay, why don't we do that?
Yeah. Anybody else? The chat. Okay. Okay, good. Okay, Christina, I didn't know about that one. That looks really good.